and welcome to Mud and Blood, a podcast dark and grim, and welcome to Valley of Blood, our actual play series featuring the game Warlock. When we last left our players, they had decided to take up the invitation of Koskov Ivanovich, Witchfinder General of Svalsing. Quite possibly a very, very foolish choice. I'll avoid spoilers, but this is possibly the most fun I've had in a while whilst gaming. You're about to hear some good times and tense moments. I make use of isolating the players from one another, which always raises the tensions in a party, as safety of numbers is very much a comfort one gets accustomed to. So sit back, relax and enjoy as the players and I engage in a light bit of psychological character building. Yes, this you've been waiting for some time in the palace, and a young sort of person who's clearly very plain clothes, quite stern, tall, has come in and invited you to follow, saying he will see you now. Standing by this door in this quite plain room. What do you guys do? Do you just get up? Do you go? What's going on here?
I feel like we both share a look. I feel like this is the appropriate time for both of us to just look at each other and be like, well.
Yeah, Victor would look at Lawrence and he'd be like, this is where it happens. I'll see you on the other side, boy. I sort of give you a little shoulder tap. Like, we'll see how this goes.
Lawrence is just like a little bewildered by the show of some affection. At least not outright hostility. And he just nods
basically
solemnly.
Victor is trying to show a bit of good
brave
spirit.
face. Yeah.
But we both know this
Whistling
ain't
past
good.
the graveyard.
We both know this ain't good.
Also, actually,
Lawrence
for the
is
sake
the
of
opposite
listeners, it's been about a month since our last session, and in that time, Simon's picked up a cold. So that's not a voice he's putting on. He just sounds like a pirate. If we can't help it, this is what we're going with.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
pirate.
I'm sorry, folks.
He's a Nordic pirate.
Yeah, they've got a great history, that lot. Anyway,
We'll solve that
on.
diegetically soon, anyway.
So yeah, Victor says a few polite words to Lorenz. The man is standing by the door. He's holding it open with one hand, and he has the other hand sort of extended out, like indicating for you to come through.
Yeah.
Yeah, we come
Lorenz is
through.
just solemnly, grimly, gravely walking forward.
Who stands up first?
I do.
Okay. You stand up and he indicates you towards the door. When Lorenz goes to stand up, he actually holds a hand up and goes, just one. That's all he says. And then he ushers for you to go towards the door. To Victor, that is.
Yeah, I leave and I look. I give Lawrence a look again, and I'm okay. And I leave.
Lorenz just nods at you as you're going through, with a slightly worried look on his face.
I'm going to say this quite loudly for the sake of our audience as well. Everyone who's at home, we are recording this digitally. Obviously, we're all around the world. Well, two of us in the same city. One of us is on the other side of the world. But obviously, we're all in a situation where we can mute ourselves, we can take headphones off and things like that. So what I want for the next section here is, Sean, you need to ditch the headphones. I'll send you a written message when we're ready. You've got time to go and get a drink, to do whatever you need to do. You're going to have a wee bit of a moment. I want to make use of the medium that we're in here to isolate you guys somewhat. But I do need you to be present in case something happens, or when it's your turn. So
you hear the sound of a gunshot in the next room. Wait, what? Sorry, I'm on the loo. What?
Yeah, you just get one of these direct messages like,
Why's my phone blowing up? Simon just got shot. Oh no! I caught my pants down.
So before you go, is the best way to message you going to be in the Discord channel or on Zoom? What's
Discord?
Discord. Okay, choice. All right, ditch the headphones.
Good luck, Simon.
Now we'll see how it goes.
So yeah, he indicates you through the door. It's a big, heavy, thick-set door which he shuts behind you. You're in a hallway. It's a very basic hallway, and as you go down, it's lit by a couple of sort of braziers, lanterns hanging from the ceiling. There's a door to the right of the hallway and a door at the end, and you know the one to the right leads further into the structure. And as you walk past that one to the right, he's walking behind. Do you say anything to him? Are you just quietly walking down this hallway with this guy following you, or what are you doing?
I mean, this isn't really the time for friendly conversation, is it? So I don't think I do say much. I mostly try to get sort of a read on this guy. Like, does he seem tense, or does he seem just calm?
He seems not calm in like a casual way, but he seems very much like very professional. Like he's got a decorum about him, and he's holding himself in a stern way. This is clearly a very serious thing that he is doing, but he is calm in that. But he's treating it with the level of gravity that it clearly needs, right? Like he doesn't come across as wanting to talk to you. He doesn't look particular. It's like when you're around a police officer who's not going out of their way to be kind to you, right? Like he's got a very stern sort of look about him as he's sort of following behind you. His head is shaved and just sort of buzzed, although wouldn't have buzzes back then, but shaved roughly. And he's sort of following you along. As you go past this door to the right, he stops and he opens it and pushes it inwards and indicates into the room, saying your meeting room, and he indicates inwards. When you get to the door, you can't make much of the room out. It's exceptionally dark. All you can see inside is a tallow candle, and you know it's tallow because you can smell the melting tallow on it in the middle of the room, casting a very hazy orange light. And because you're in such a well-lit hallway, you can't really see anything in there apart from this candle, which is illuminating a table, and in front of the table, with its back to you, is a vacant chair. A very basic chair. We're talking like a very basic wooden table, very plain wooden chair in an otherwise pitch black room that you can only make out because of this faint orange glow.
Right. In that case, I look at this man and I sort of give him a nod and I sit down.
When you go in there and sit down, the door clunks shut behind you and you can hear the sound of a bolt being drawn across it. So you sit there in the dark, I'm assuming. Do you do anything? Do you just sit there? What do you do?
Do I still have my pipe?
Yes, sure.
In that case,
You'll be disarmed, but otherwise, yes.
Yeah. In that case, I take out the pipe and I start smoking it. I haven't had a drink in a wee while. And I just sit there, smoking, waiting.
Okay. And in this room...
Sorry, I was also going to say, like, as I do that, as the light of the pipe goes up, sorry, I take a look around the room as well, seeing if there's anything in particular that I notice. But it feels pretty featureless.
Yeah, it's very dark, and you don't really make much out because of how dark it is. But you could... Make let's make a spot roll.
All
Let's
right.
see. Let's do a roll here.
My brilliant spotting skills. It's the goddamn 20. There it is. Okay. Well, would you look at that? It's a 23, so it's a success.
So you're sitting in this room, and it's very dark, and you're sort of looking around in the dark, and you can't make much out. Because of and the light is fighting you. Like, your eyes are adjusting to the darkness, but the glowing candle and then the glowing embers in the end of your pipe, every time you inhale, it sort of flares up and illuminates your face. And then you sort of, you don't know what it is that draws your attention to it first. You don't know if it's the sound of his breathing, or if it's the slight way that the candle's reflecting off his eyes, but you realise sitting opposite you in the dark, in the shadows, slightly back from the table, is a figure. And there's something about him, you can tell that this figure who's been sitting there quietly watching you for some time is Koskov Ivanovich, just sitting in the dark, seemingly observing you.
Yeah, I look up from the pipe. I'm like, I was expecting, I don't know, I was expecting a slightly more comfortable room for this conversation. There we are.
He doesn't seem to immediately react. He sort of, you can tell the way he's sitting as he's leaning back in the chair with one leg over the other, with his hands resting on his knee, and then realizing that you're aware of his presence, he sort of drags with a scrape the chair across the floor until he's slightly illuminated in this light. He's got his sort of his features, though he was quite sort of worn and stuff like that. He doesn't look like an old man, but he looks like a man who spent a lot of time on the road and things like that. And you can make out the shadows, that the light enhances that and sort of makes out the sternness of his face even stronger. And the candles is glinting off his eyes in the dark. And he sort of leans forward. And hopefully he has the same voice he had last time. He goes, Captain Erkenkrantz, I appreciate...
You sort of indicate when it's...
Yeah, no, you nod.
I was just going to say that I indicate with a nod that I am listening.
I appreciate your accepting my invitation. Now, what I propose is twofold. The most important part, and the part which I believe you are here for, is an open and frank discussion and sharing of information. But in these trying times, first you must complete a test. If you'll consent to my test, then we'll share words, thoughts, information, and both leave here much the wiser.
Question that would be going through Erkenkrantz's head. Does he know anything about these games that the Nissians play, or is this a total new thing to him?
Totally new. The closest you can think of is Witch Hunters back home. It's the closest thing you've got to an equivalent of this guy. And they're much more fire, brimstone, chuck the chick in a river, see if she floats shit. So this is different.
Okay. I'm not usually the man who plays games, but if I must, I assume I will have to. I don't really have an option now, do I? And I look around and I sort of indicate the bolted door. We'll see what happens. He doesn't make any jokes, which I personally want to do.
He sniffs.
Very astute of you. Good. This should be easy, it'll be short. Possibly painless. Word association. I say a word. You say a word. You say the word that first comes into your mind, your first impulse. If you hesitate, you fail the test. You say the wrong word, you fail the test. But I want to see you.
And he sort of reaches across at you with like a gnarly, calloused finger, on the end of which is a nail, which is in desperate need of clipping. He sort of indicates towards you,
you here,
and he taps on your chest.
I need to see this. This is what the test is about. If you understand, nod.
I nod.
He sort of leans back. You can hear a rustling. You can't really see too much. You can see he's rustling with something underneath his, like, sort of underneath the verge of the table. And you get the impression that maybe he's sitting something on his knee. But his eyes are locked on you. You can see the candles reflecting off them. And he is staring at you. Really sort of looking you over. And there's a pause. An uncomfortable, pregnant pause. And he just sort of looks at you. You can sort of, now that you've been in here a while, you can sort of make up the smell of him. It's the strong smell of soap, and cheap soap too, like this basic lard soap is sort of emanating off him. And it sort of goes alongside the burning tallow a wee bit. And in the dark, you can hear his breathing. Candles are reflecting off his eyes. Like playing, actually, the flame plays across his eyes in a way that's somewhat unsettling. And then after a pause, he just goes,
darkness.
Fear.
You can hear a scribbling on paper. And you think his eyebrows raised slightly in the dark.
Brightness.
Opportunity.
Pure.
Impossible.
Tainted.
Commonplace.
Belief.
Compromised.
War.
Pain.
Death.
Certainty.
Gold.
Greed.
Command.
Living.
Survival.
Must.
The flame keeps playing over his eyes. He just keeps staring at you. And then he sort of moves what looks to be a small little leather-bound book, and in it is writing, and probably Nissian. It's a language you can't understand. And you see him sort of write things down for a while. And he looks away from you for the first time since he really moved his chair forward. And he fills it in for a bit. And he closes it and looks up at you.
Why are you here?
I am here because it is my job and my opportunity. I'm here because it is the job that was available at the time, which I accepted.
So, death, orders, that's why you're here. You're told to be here, make money, do a task.
More or less. It's peacetime. It's not very... the jobs worthy of my company are not as plentiful as they used to be. This is the one that existed. Of course, there's also a matter of loyalty. But in the end, my loyalty lies with my company, as you would know.
What of other things? Larger things? Do you think there's much meaning to this? Why we're here? Solarius, Lunari, and all of that?
I'm not a philosopher. I've never studied the subject. I think that life is a struggle. The struggle will be here either if we will it or not. But I think that in the end there is an escape to it, but I don't think necessarily it lies within the God choose, but the life you choose. Sir.
Let's expound upon that, shall we? Struggle. Life is struggle. It's all a struggle. We all struggle, from the wailing babe to the decrepit old man. We struggle through every element of it. Struggle is what we know, what we do, who we are. Would you agree?
I agree.
Now, the problem with a struggle is eventually one side overcomes. Now, when you only know struggle, what happens when struggle ends?
I've seen it happen many times. You make new struggles, and you jump at them for opportunity. Men who only know struggle will fight to find new ones as they see fit. It will usually be their doom. I've seen it many times in my work. I've partially been a victim of it myself. I'm sure you have.
So struggle begets struggle. A struggler will find more struggle. And it is a good thing. From through this we prosper.
It gets awfully boring if you don't have anything to do now, doesn't it?
He sits back. And he sort of just keeps chuckling to himself.
Captain Erkenkrantz, I thank you for coming here. I must go and see to your friend, but we shall talk soon.
I look forward to it.
And he gets up, walks back towards the door that you came through, and he knocks on it calmly, just twice. And you hear the slide come out. He speaks under his breath briefly in Nissian before moving on. And you're left alone for a moment, just in the dark. Do you do anything?
Erkenkrantz lets out a deep sigh. Sort of. he lets his pipe die. And if anyone was observing him, they would see that he is clearly sort of letting go of a very... a lot of pressure just left him, sort of. He just falls apart a little bit. Then he stands up.
Cool. And then you're indicated out of the room and let off. And now I've sent the message to Sean. So I need you to
Mute
do
myself.
the same. Yeah, duck away for a moment and...
write me on Discord. It's the easiest.
Yep, we'll do. We'll do. Perfect.
Good luck.
Oh no.
So, while he rolls up a new character, you're left. Lorenz is left for some time in his waiting room.
Was it about 7 or 8 minutes?
A bit more than that, actually. It was closer to sort of about 15, 20. Yeah, slightly longer, more like 15.
Lorenz is just, he's got that, he's sitting on the, whatever, I don't know if it's a bench or whatever, but he's got his hand and it's just doing that thing where he's just cycling his fingers, tapping on the desk. It's sort of like almost a nervous tick while he waits. Just instead of like, being perfectly poised and still, he's got tapping fingers on the desk. Or on the bench.
Yeah, so you're there for some time. It's about 15 minutes or so. And then the door through which Victor went swings open loudly. And standing there again is the man from earlier. He just sort of looks at you and nods his head into the hallway.
He doesn't have what is his demeanor like? I'm standing up, and as I'm going towards him, I'm just taking in his demeanor, if it's changed since last time.
He is stern, but calm. Simon asked the same question. He is stern, very stern, but calm. He's professional doing a job, but at the same time, he's very much in charge, and he knows it. The way I described him to Simon is, when you've interacted with the police and they're not trying to be friendly, they're not in PR mode, right? They're just in I am in charge mode. It's kind of like that. So he just sort of stands there, nods inward towards you, and just sort of waits.
Yeah, like I said, I'm walking towards just as I'm doing that, taking it, scrutinizing.
So you go into a hallway, and in this hallway there's a couple of lamps, maybe they're braziers, you're not sure, hanging from the ceiling, and they're lighting this hallway that he leads you down. And he, as you go down, there's a doorway to your right, and there's a doorway at the end of the hall. And he leads you down the hall, past the door halfway up the hall, to the one at the end, where he opens it. And past it you can see what looks to be a spiral staircase heading upwards. Your standard sort of medieval spiral staircase going up a tower. And he indicates for you to go up those stairs. And as you do, he closes the door behind you and follows you up. And in here there's natural light. It's got sort of portholes, I guess, like your sort of slits, your arrow slits for light up the tower. And as you make your way up these spiral staircases, your feet are sort of echoing up, and you go up multiple stories. You walk past multiple doors leading off to other floors, and you're up maybe 5 or more floors. It's hard to say. The spiral, the way it just goes up and around, up and around, up and around, is discombobulating a wee bit, disorientating. But eventually you get towards what is clearly the top. The stairs have stopped at this point. And he opens a door and the light streams through. You guys went relatively, it was about midday that you arrived at the palace, wasn't it? And you haven't been here that long. So, was it evening?
I think we were invited for lunch.
That's right, yeah. So it's about midday, so it's very bright, and the sun streams through this door that he's opened. And actually, even though you've been walking through natural light, the light is so bright. It is quite sort of like blinding for a moment. And he just stands there next to the door. It's clearly waiting for you to walk through it.
Let's give my eyes a second to adjust. I can actually see where I'm going. I'll step forward.
Okay. So yeah, you wait for your eyes to adjust, and you can hear outside, like the sounds of the city, albeit at a distance. And you can see that it's leading you out onto like the tower. There's a walkway around it, no rails or anything. You know, Osh would have a nightmare. It's just a platform that you're walking out onto. And when you step out, the door shuts behind you. And you hear a bolt be dragged across it, leaving you on top of this tower where in the middle you've got like a cone, and the cone finishes with like the sort of onion bulbous point that you sort of see at, say, the Kremlin. And around it is a platform maybe 1 or 2 meters wide, not very wide. Two people going past each other would be uncomfortable, considering that there is a sheer drop down the side of this tower, where it's just like a platform that you'd assume maybe a watch or something would be posted, and it just goes around in a ring around this tower with just this door at the top. There's no rails or anything, nothing stopping you from falling off. And as a matter of fact, if Lorenz is slightly uncomfortable of heights, he'd probably be pretty uncomfortable up here. This is clearly the highest point in the palace, and as a matter of fact, the city for that matter. And it's looking out across the city, across Old Town, over the river, which you can see at this distance what look like toy ships making their way up and down it, and across towards the slums where you can just make out on its hill the large church that was built by the father that you're now here looking for. And the wind up here, even though it's not a strong wind, just sort of, you know, envelops you and grabs a hold of you. You're very exposed. You feel like you can see everything, but if anyone wanted to see you, they could. There's no shadows here in which you could hide. There's
probably just that moment where, as he realizes where he is, he's not afraid of heights in the sense that it's like, yeah, there's high enough up that he'd be uncomfortable, and he's doing that thing where he's like looking towards the horizon, then looking down a little bit, realizing like, oh, this is pretty high, and not spending a long time dwelling, looking down too much.
Yeah.
And he's probably just subconsciously, his left hand sort of just doing that thing where it just gets a little bit of reassurance that there's something behind him that he can rest his hand on. For the first couple of seconds that he realizes where he is.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is something we haven't really touched on much because you've been in the city the whole time. But Svelsing, the country, is beautiful. It's in a giant valley, and up here you can clearly see rolling fields beyond the village, beyond the city, sorry. And in like the distance to the north, where you get the pinnacle of the valley, you can see these ginormous mountains, the Blittenberg Mountains, coming together. In the sort of wellspring from which the river that the whole country is built around runs. Snow-capped. And it's quite magnificent. Although you do make
a view to die for, maybe. Or are we gonna steal Bond and say a view to kill?
However, you do make out like just one, pillar of smoke coming from a distant village, slightly too big to be anything but burning buildings. And just to remind you that this picturesque, beautiful scene is not entirely at peace, and that struggle is real here. And you're left up here. Wind howling around you. What do you do?
Can I see another tower?
You can see other towers around. None of them are as big as this one. This is a large tower sort of attached to the keep of the palace, as it were, rising up. There is smaller ones nearby. They're all at different heights, as is the style. Again, think of think of like the palaces you see in Moscow and stuff, where they're all different heights and things. They've got quite sort of ostentatious crowns on them and stuff like that. And it looks.
How long did it take to walk here?
Up the tower?
How long does it? Did my character think it? How long does Lorenz think it took to walk up here?
Probably a few minutes. Your legs are probably feeling it a wee bit too, actually.
There's just the classic thoughts running through his head, like if this is a either intimidation, torture, or whatever, but it's not an. He doesn't know what it is yet. It could be anything. Why he's up here?
Yeah.
Most likely to prove it.
As he looks around the grounds, you can see soldiers, many of them red sashes, and servants coming and going. And you can see some of the ones on the tower looking up at you. You feel very exposed, very seen. There's no hiding that you're up here.
At that point, I'll cross my arms and just look down. Try and brave the disorientation of the height.
Yeah.
Looking down a little.
So you're up here for a minute or two, and then you hear the scraping of wood come from the door, as you realise that a small window at about head height on the door has been exposed, as someone slid like a panel out of the way. You react to
I'm
this
just
at all?
gonna wait. No, sorry.
Do you react to this at all?
Having just a small moment of courage, he's not gonna make the first move. He's gonna sort of like wait, maybe 10 seconds, and then appearing as if he's taking in a view that has been interrupted by this, he's gonna glance towards it, sort of with a putting on an air of calmness.
You glance towards the window. It's got bars on it, little wooden bars, a little ornately actually. They're carved quite ornately, and sort of painted in gold paint, which is flaking and peeling off. And through that, you can sort of make out the profile silhouette of a figure, which seems to be leaning up against the door and looking sort of slightly downwards.
Cast in sort of shadow.
A wee bit, except for the lights coming through, so you can make out that this seems to be, a guy, could be around his 50s, quite weather worn, thick moustache.
Yeah, no, this setup kind of reminds me of going to confession.
He sort of,
But a confession with that hell of a view.
he looks up out at you, and you can only see sort of the top half of his face, but there does seem to be a bit of joy to his eyes that you seem to have cottoned onto him a wee bit.
Mr. Toshin. Is that how I say it?
Taoshin, but close enough.
You here to find out some things at our behest, are you not?
I'm in the business of preventing things from getting out of hand if I can. Finding things out from you will be one way of doing that.
What I propose is an open and frank sharing of information. Discussion where light will be shone on all of our secrets.
Open airing of the truth.
Yes. But first, you must pass the test, Mr. Toshin. Simple. A word association. I say a word and you answer your truth. No trickery, no gimmicks, no lies, none of the fake personas you normally adorn in such circumstances. Your truth. I need to know that your soul is where it should be. Do I make myself clear? Nod, if so.
Perfectly clear.
Do you nod?
Yeah.
He stares at you until you do.
Right.
He sort of ducks out of view slightly where you can hear him, fussing around with something. And then his face comes back and he's watching you. And up here, you're actually starting to get quite dry. You've been up here long enough now that you're starting to burn a bit. And even in the breeze...
Probably quite glary too.
It is, yeah. And you're sweating. And I can't help it. It's just hot. Not nervously sweating, just sweating. And his eyes, that glare sort of shines off them when he looks at you. He stares at you out on this tower. And it's a pregnant, uncomfortable stare. He's just looking at you.
My gaze is just drifting towards, across the horizon, mainly looking westward.
Light.
Solaris.
You can hear scribbling on paper.
Dark.
Obviously, Lorenz is saying this quickly, but I'm having to think.
Urias.
What would Lorenz say?
Oh, okay. What would Lorenz say? Yes.
That's what I think he'd say deception.
Evil.
Men.
Good.
The state.
Faith.
Redemption.
Dishonesty.
Tool.
Loyalty.
Earned.
Father.
Unknown.
Betrayal.
Anger.
Survival.
Required.
His eyes, for the first time since he started asking those questions, looks away, and you can hear scribbling on paper for some time. And then he looks up at you and goes,
Why are you here, Mr. Toshin?
It's as I said. I'm here to prevent a war. To make sure cooler heads prevail.
Do you believe that? Is that why you are here? Right now?
I am here right now because I'm taking a chance that, from what I've heard about this here, which isn't all that much, it's that you're not exactly that keen on dragging foreigners into a costly war. And that, more or less, is an organ of the state here. As a bureaucratic, you don't mind me saying, tool of the state, we might have some common ground in seeing that we prevent hostilities in this beautiful but troubled place.
So, it's all politics. It's all it is. Politics. The petty games of men. It's all you care about?
I care about making it so that those petty games harm as few people as possible, and perhaps even help them in the long run.
Philanthropist. You care about people.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Well, it'll have to do.
He sort of looks down and scribbles away on his paper. He looks up and goes,
We'll talk soon.
and then drags the panel across the door, leaving you on the tower.
Lorenz is thinking, but he doesn't say. I wonder how many witches he's caught or had confessed through such a method.
You're assuming a confession's important.
Well, I mean, he's not thinking that he's, doing this as a one-off interview to get a confession. You could be leaving you up here for like 10 days, and be like, if you just confess, you can come inside.
So, you're up on this tower. Nearby, some pigeons sort of coo amongst themselves. What are you up to?
Can I move to a side that's shaded from the sun a little bit?
Yep, you absolutely could.
And maybe there's less wind on whatever side. But sheltered.
I reckon you'd have to choose one or the other, wind or sun.
Well, then I'm oscillating between the two. When the heat becomes unbearable, I move to where there's shade, and when the wind becomes unbearable, I move to the other side.
After a period of time, half an hour or so, you hear the bolt drawn from the door, and the doors swing open. And if you look around, you can see the young man from earlier waiting for you.
Sort of make sure my hands aren't too sweaty, and I start walking towards him.
Yeah, you've probably got that uncomfortable, I know I've burnt myself vibe too from the sun. As you make your way down the stairs and down several, not all the way down, you don't go all the way down. You're led through one of the doors, one of the platforms, and down a hallway where you've got these sort of large windows letting in light along this hallway, which opens to a small sort of dining room, big enough. When I say small, I mean small in a palace sense, but big enough that it could fit a dozen or so people. So you're sort of led in there, and
pretty much just a council chamber, like council chambers sort of thing.
Yeah, and you are led in and you sit down at this table where a very basic lunch is spread: butter, bread, cold meats, nothing extravagant. And shortly after, Victor is also brought in and sat down at the table.
How sunburnt does he look?
He doesn't look sunburnt.
Or was his measure of yeah.
Unlike you, like when you walk in, Victor, Lorenz looks slightly clammy. He's got that sweat in his hair vibe going on. He has hair, I'm not sure. And slightly pink. Whereas Victor, on the other hand, walks in looking pretty plain for wear. He comes in through a different door. Also, for the sake of Simon, Victor was led up several flights of steps before being walked into this this dining room that's been described.
And just before I like to cut it off, I muted myself on Zoom. Does that create any issues? Or
No, we should be fine. I'll figure it out.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Good. In that case, I look at Lorenz. You made it out. Trying to give you a
more
friend.
like I made it back in.
Oh. It's all a process.
You could say I've come in from. We have a saying in this business: you come in from the cold. I came in from where it was both too hot and too cold.
This is not private, right? This is not a private place we're in.
Still in the palace.
Probably people.
Yeah.
It's just you guys in the room, but it's fairly safe to say that there's probably the walls probably have eyes and ears.
Yeah, probably. That's what I was assuming.
Nice view though.
Terribly nice view in that room, wasn't it?
Wasn't really a room.
Oh well. I guess we'll have to discuss that later. Now what?
Well, I'm pretty hungry. You know why we came here for lunch.
Well, let's eat something. We can talk it over later.
What's the meal, Liam?
Like I described, there's a bunch of dried and spiced meats, salamis and things like that. Butter, bread, a very basic sort of lunchtime meal. But the fact that it includes cured meats probably means it's slightly above typical peasant fare, but it's certainly not exquisite,
Yeah, I'll have some bread and some sausage.
Yeah. Spiced sausage sounds very pleasant right now.
So whilst you guys are there sort of having your lunch, after a moment, after sort of 10 or 15 minutes, long enough for you to refresh yourselves, there's also wine served, just a basic red wine. And water.
I've had too much sun to be drinking wine.
While you're doing your thing, you end up being joined by Koskov, who walks in, who has, sort of, again, similar clothes to what he's wearing previously. So there's a bit of fur mixed in with a, like a small sort of furry hat, like a small, there's mini Ushankas. It's not even a Ushanka, but those little caps that they wear. It's a very sort of Slavic look. He sort of comes in, with a long coat on that's got fur and felt. It's like felt lined with fur. That sort of goes down close to his ankles, and but it's sleeveless, showing some sort of quite sort of linen sleeves. And he sort of walks in and joins you at the table, and he sort of leans back in his chair and crosses one leg over the other and just rests his hands on his knee, and he's sort of looking between you both.
I trust refreshments were suitable.
Nothing to complain about.
Lawrence just nods.
Good. Good. Thank you for accepting my invitation. So, how may I be of service?
Well, I'll cut right to the chase. What's happened to our priest friend? Well, our priest friend, potentially, not yours.
He sort of just smiles when you say this.
I thought I made it clear I'm not interested in politics. What makes you think I know about this priest?
I would imagine coming into a place like this, you'd avail yourself of all things.
Yes, I would be surprised if you didn't know anything about this. It's rather a big piece of news, isn't it?
Maybe on your side of the mountains. It's rather below the interests of what I normally look into.
Now, should we just cut straight to the chase here and tell what we know? Or should we not?
If he's playing coy, I'm going to be playing coy.
Urkenkranz doesn't have time for that. So Urkenkranz looks at him and you're like...
You can drop it to him.
Urkenkranz looks at Costco and he's like, well, you may say you know nothing, but... Well, some people on our side have said quite clearly that when the house of the bishop was being ransacked, they saw a man quite like certain someone overseeing the whole enterprise. And it would be strange for this person to have been here without knowing anything about the rest of the business, I'd say. If you don't mind me being...
We might not know much. We don't know much about Nissia, but certain aspects, certain people have reputations. You have a reputation.
He smiles slightly at that.
Play into that ego.
I was at the house, yes. I've been to the house whilst it was being searched.
And you know nothing about the business?
What do you mean by the business?
The disappearance of the bishop and accompanying complications. If you'd like to phrase them that way.
You see, I'm rather much more interested in accompanying complications, if I am honest with you. What do you know of Lady Hoffman?
I know that she's a woman of strange views. To put it that way.
Oh, you really must elaborate on that.
I think at this point, if we know things about Lady Hoffman, perhaps a trade's in order.
Oh, yes.
For instance, we happen to know that Mr. Hoffman was last seen being taken across the bridge in the company of certain Red Sash troops led by a certain Red Sash commander.
I've heard such things.
Now, seeing as they're from your country, perhaps you have got far more access to the doings of such a enterprising group of soldiers.
I potentially could find out a thing or two. It depends. Why?
Because from our side, making sure we can put a nice, neat bow on the events here is going to go a long way in satisfying our interests back home. And if I can't put a nice, neat bow on what happened to the priest, someone else is going to come looking after me.
What does a nice, neat bow look like, Mr. Toshin?
Well, right now, what I've already had to report as a good, dutiful servant to the state, is that priest was last seen in the accompaniment of guards employed by Nicia. Now, unless I've got more to go on than that, people back at court are going to take that to be one thing. I need a counterpoint.
It paints quite a troublesome picture.
It's an untied bow.
I do find all this political talk tiring. It's far too small-minded. There's more to the world than the struggles of nations and empires. We realized that some time ago.
Perhaps you'll just have a little bit of faith in us.
Faith into heathens such as you.
Not so different. Perhaps we might find certain things just as troubling.
Where is Freda Hoffman?
Not in the city. And not alone either.
In company, you could say.
In company with whom, though? That's the question I'm most interested in. You see, I'll give you your bow. I'll give you a signed affidavit saying whatever it is you require me to say, and the priest can turn up wherever it is he must turn up. But her lady must be found. She is what you should be looking for. She's much more important than your petty squabbles of nations and kings and men. She is...
Well, it just so happens. Sorry to interrupt you and where you're going, but I think we happen to be on a parallel course here. You see, I can, like I've said, once the priest's tied up in a nice neat bow, we have to deal with Lady Hoffman. We have to find a suitable conclusion to this escapade that she's gone off on.
Oh, yes. And we have some issues of our own. God damn it. Give me a second. We have some issues of our own regarding Lady. I'm sure you're aware of the presence of our third person of interest, so to speak, in this unfortunate business.
He's a valuable tool. He's more on the trail than you two have been.
He's a dog, is what he is.
Dogs are useful to masters.
They can also bite the wrong person.
Dogs can be put down.
Some people don't like dogs getting put down when they've got such thoroughbred pedigree.
I'm not such a person.
Honestly, I think sometimes tools get dull. But sentiment being what it is, I'd rather not put that one away just yet.
It'll complicate things immeasurably. The old lion is put to rest, I'd think. Even as much as I personally sometimes wish for it. To be honest.
To speak plainly, what he wants to find the lady. That's his only task. And preferably, he ain't really that concerned about her at all. He just wants to avoid a scandal with her.
Oh, he's more concerned about the Duke and his business.
Right. It's about the scandal of whatever happens to her.
And this bothers me how? I wish to find the lady, he's looking for the lady, I don't see the problem.
You would not mind elucidating, as you said before, on why this lady is so important to you. Seems rather the important missing piece, if you'd like to.
He keeps bad company.
Now, we don't particularly care about her company at all.
You should. That's the real struggle in all of this. What her and her company are up to. While you play politics and think the decisions made in some court matter, they're involved in the crux of all of this. And we need to stop them.
He looks towards Victor.
The struggles must be eternal. We can't have winners or losers. The struggle must go on.
That is true. But in the metaphysical sense, that is true. Currently we are concerned with mundane matters.
Well, I'm quite happy if she's pretty small fry in what you're hunting. To help you however you want with dealing with the rest of the company. If matters of politics ain't your forte, then all I can say is to advise, as you've already so willingly offered, with the priest. And then with her, it would simply be, we save the Duke's family blushes however she turns up. And we'll help you find her and her compatriots. I'll give you all the information we have. If you are concerned with this struggle that is larger than both our nations, there's a slight skepticism, Lorenz saying that, then why burn potential allies in that struggle? This could be a great opportunity to find some allies or compatriots.
And why should I trust you?
Because we are interested in seeing this business concluded in as peaceful a way as possible.
That's the problem. I suspect peace and conclusions will not go hand in hand here.
I said as peaceful as possible. Conflict in this sense, I think, is an inevitability, as we said before. But We want there to be as little of that as possible between our nations.
And if there must be conflict, it's got to be over the right thing.
There are things that swords can settle. That is my work. But I'd rather see the business of this done in a way so that our respective nations can go on with their business without trying to kill each other so thoroughly.
So, what does that look like? What end state do you need so you achieve what you achieve? What puzzle pieces do you need to fall in place?
Well, one theory that will be quite plausibly believed based upon what we've already reported is the lady falling in on some rather dubious sorts due to her struggling and failing marriage in a foreign land, decided to end the problem of her husband by perhaps she was misled by these people she was with. I'm certain she probably was at some point. Vulnerable lady like herself. Fled based upon what she'd done with her bad crew. And then tracking her down, it turns out that bad crew's turned on her having gotten what they wanted, which was getting rid of the priest.
To my particular view, I think the most necessary thing here is that the lady is the one responsible for what has happened.
Would that not cause you scandal back
influence
home with this
Yes.
Duke?
The Duke may have issues, but the Duke is not our main point of interest. That is Maynard's business. Our business is securing peace between our two fine countries.
I'm sure, even if it was a scandal, that maintained the noble honor of the house involved, Loren says with dripping, slightly condescending, then it will be taken.
So, the priest turning up with unwholesome company in a undeniable show of sin having been left.
He pauses for a moment.
Having been caught in the throes of intimacy would suit you. Scorned lover, taking him out and moving on.
If there's infidelity on part of the priest, it would create great sympathy with whatever bad choices has happened to Lady Offman.
I've seen my share of theatrics in my day. The vengeful, maddened wife of a despondent and tyrannical bishop, taken down by his own decadence, seems to fit the narrative quite well. To be perfectly honest, I'm sure enough of our people would be willing to believe such a convenient story. It's not even entirely untrue now, is it?
Apart from the decadence part, that might be or swallow. Just
I've
turning up in the bed of a of a lover getting dragged out. There should be. Infidelity is a dime a dozen in the noble houses anyway. Something they understand quite well.
So, our main business here, really, and to speak openly about it is probably in our best interest. So to make our alignments clear, what we want here is for the Duke, Kruber, to not withdraw his support of the Emperor. But for this business to conclude, as my friend has said here, in a neat bow that leads us to a situation where we do not have internal turmoil, as was said by some other person. I don't remember who said it. That would be unquestionably bad for both our nations.
Well, I want the lady found and brought to my attention, or to be struck down by an accident. And I need her and her group of friends gone, broken up, destroyed. So the struggle can continue and balance may remain. Now, if that is achieved, if she is done, gone, her group is gone, their legacy gone, then the priest will turn up as you wish. I shall see to it.
Very well.
Seems acceptable enough to me.
It is a worthy accommodation.
Good. Good. Is there anything else I can do for you? Really rather busy.
I believe, and I'm not sure if you can deal with this, but I believe that that old lion will need to disappear at some point.
He shrugs.
His time is coming to an end. He's way too cruel and way too stupid. He is not unintelligent, mind, but he is incorrigible, as you would say. He cannot be changed, I believe.
Is a relic of a past era that is well worth being blown away.
And if the lady is to come about, I don't know, I have a feeling that he will only complicate matters. As we would say, there is no personal bias involved here at all, of course. I just think that he's going to be trouble. It's something for you to be aware of, if you're not already aware of his character.
Being aware of things is kind of what I do.
In that case, I have nothing more to say.
Well, I promise we can keep in touch. If you would like updates. I'm sure you'll be following us anyway.
I'll watch from afar. If I need you, I'll talk to you. I am here and everywhere. So, if you'll excuse me, I must go, and I believe you have a lady to track down.
And he stands up and walks out. Didn't touch any of the food or any of the drink. Just walks out and leaves you.
Well, Nissians are indeed a strange bunch.
This is a bad business. It's not my trade.
Well, let's just put it this way. For someone who protests about not really... Well... Shall we leave?
I have no taste for this place. Let's go.
Sausage was alright, though.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Actually,
interesting
yes, I pick up a few of these spiced sausages, and I'm like, at least I will be able to tell them that the Nissian Empire did give me something, and it's a few more.
Our bread's still a bit superior, though.
Yes, this is tasteless. Anyway, let's just go.
So you're taken out of the palace. No issue there. You're back out on the street. At this point, I sort of throw it over to you. Is there anything else you guys want to do or talk about before we wrap up the session? This is your chance to stew on what you've discussed, have a scene where you discuss it, or go do some other investigation you want to do, look into other stuff you want to do. Now's the time, basically.
I think we're having a walk back, and we're having a discussion on the walk back.
Yeah,
I don't know if Simon
that
feels the
sounds
same.
like what I would be doing as well.
So what did he do for you? He just put you in a room and asked you some questions?
Yes, he asked me some philosophical questions about the world and how it works, and my feelings towards them. What did he do to you? I saw you were a bit. And he touches his face, sort of like wiping sweat that isn't there from his face. Like a bit worried, perhaps.
Well, I might be a bit sunburnt tomorrow. Nah, nothing quite so dull. And I'm gonna squint and point up towards the top tower of the palace. A little bit of a confessional set up at the top there.
How long was I waiting? Like in comparison to how long you were waiting? I'm asking Liam this.
Question.
Like, are we aware of how long?
Out of character, in character, sorry.
Yeah. Out of character, yeah.
Out of character.
If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. I was just like, if it's like I had to wait 2 hours and he waited 30 minutes, that's quite different.
In character, you'd have. He was up there for quite a while. He was left up at that tower for quite some time. So it would have been at least 40 minutes you were waiting after your talk for him. It was considerable. He spent half an hour sitting on the side of the tower just sweating. So it was a while. Yeah.
I see. Well, I was not treated to anything quite so unpleasant.
Missed out. Our view was quite good.
Oh. The better the view, the longer the fall, I've heard. I'd rather just have...
Well, this place is far to fall.
In any case, I'm glad we both made it out of there intact.
But it does sort of seem our little hunch and our little risk and our little gamble paid off.
Well enough. I was expecting us to not get out of that place so easily. But it seems they view us as important pawns or whatever these folks think of us as.
I was definitely gonna cut you off when you said what I got the impression of is where I won't go so far as to say idiots, because he would definitely kick me off the top of it. Thought I was an idiot. But useful, deniable. He knows what he's going to get with us. Whereas his own people, his own interests, his own reporting structure. As much as he wants to deny it, Nicia is a very political place, from what we gather.
Yes, he doesn't seem to be so fond of all that. Maybe that's why he likes us. Huh?
I think he feigns that he doesn't quite like it. Or that he doesn't engage in it. He certainly does.
He does. Not even I am blind enough to not see that.
But it seems, depending on what we find, our interests may diverge, and it may be at a point where we're no longer able to control things because we've already made a bit of a bargain, and if we were to go and change the terms, he has information we don't about what it is he's hunting. The fact that he's, I wouldn't say unwilling to hunt it himself, more like he's okay with sending fodder in first to just test the waters, has me a little concerned. I might have to brush up on my swordsmanship.
I've been thinking about that since I came out of that place. The one wish I have now is that I could call in my company. They're far away. We'll have to trust ourselves.
This is definitely the time where I did wish I had a bit of a guard of troops. I can play the game in a room, in an alleyway even. It's a lot harder when it's a group. A much better one-on-one.
Well, I might be able to whip something up. I have my contacts, I do this work on the regular. We'll see what we'll find out. In any case, what do you actually think we're supposed to be doing? Should we bang down the door of this company?
Against my bitter judgment, I feel emboldened, for whatever reason, to take another leap of faith and go visit my contact west of the city. If this is all a theological issue, then I think following that lead might shortcut us some distance.
If you're willing to do that, I'll spend my time whipping up the mundane business of finding some men to fight for us that I trust enough to not stab us in the back. Cover all the bases.
And then there's the Maynard issue.
Oh yes. That's a complicated one. There is nothing I'd like to do more than to slice him open. Sometimes. He's a beast and a brutal, cruel madman. But he is important and his lineage protects him. He has made clear.
It's what he goes home saying that matters to me. Not how he goes home or how he says it. He doesn't have to be alive to talk. But if he is, he must say the right thing.
Oh.
Or say nothing at all.
Oh yes. I was going to ask, have you ever tried your hand at making a letter up that didn't exist before it existed?
I've on occasion had to.
It's an option then. But quite a risky one. In any case, we'll see what happens.
Oh, look at that. We just happened to be right outside Strosslin House.
Would you look at that?
And I think here is a good spot for us to finish this session. Yeah. This is where I wanted to finish it anyway. So you're here. You brought yourself here. Perfect. So thank you muchly, and we'll pick up again next time. Well, probably after Christmas, I'd say, based on all of our schedules. Yeah. So yeah. Thank you, and until then, we'll catch you all up. Thanks everyone for listening. And that concludes this episode. Thank you for listening to Valley of Blood. If you like what you've heard and you would like to hear more, please head to mbcast.co for all things Mud and Blood related. We would like to thank Dan Heim for allowing us to use his music for the theme song of this show, as well as some of the atmosphere heard in the episode, as well as story blocks and tabletop audio for much of the sound effects and remaining music. But that is us for now. Tune in 2 weeks for the next episode. Until then, have a good one. Arida.